extremely pleased tonight to have Barb Johnson with us to talk about the March of the Madonnas. It was a subject of which she was totally unfamiliar 3 years ago when somebody asked her to present a program at Women's Study Club. Barb went well beyond just a presentation. She compiled this book, and she is probably now the leading authority in Ripon, in Wisconsin, in the world, on the March of the Madonnas. It's a subject that interests us at the Society quite a bit because I think it reflects a time in Ripon's history, in the middle of the 20th century, when women were unusually active in this town, more active than they've been in the past, and perhaps more active than they are now that they've got more opportunities for jobs and so forth. So it was a kind of a high point, and I think the March of the Madonnas itself represents the degree to which women in Ripon organized could be extremely effective in that we reached national prominence with the march. Before, however, we start, we have one marketing question that we have to get to. This time we tried as an experiment putting an ad in the Express.
Yeah.
Okay. How many people saw it? Okay. All right. Okay. I don't know how many people are here because of it, but it is good to see that it was seen that much. We may try it again. And with that, I'll let Barbara start. This is ours, the Historical Society. There is a display that we have put together, in fact put together a while ago, but have recreated in the room right adjacent to us. So on your way out, you may want to take a look at that after having seen the program. And I stole this book from it, and it will be back there then. Okay.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that this program that I did for Ripon Study Club is absolutely nothing compared to the program that Mildred Watson did for Study Club, which I'm going to tell you about. The March of the Madonna highlighted the beginning of the Christmas season in Ripon for approximately 11 years, beginning in 1945. Can you hear me now? The pageant traced the mother and child motif from the earliest known prehistoric figure to the Henry Moore statue, which was completed in 1944. All scenes were inspired by works of art. The story was told by tableaus, costumed in vivid fabrics, and life-size reproductions that were created by local citizens. The idea for the March of the Madonna began when Mildred Watson realized that she had committed herself to doing 2 Christmas programs. One was for the Ripon Study Club. Some of you know Mildred Watson. And the other was for the local chapter of AAUW, or the Women's Society at the Congregational Church. It turned out that all 3 clubs participated in the first pageant. She was a busy mother with 3 young children, and she was also a dedicated Woman Club volunteer. 2?
Yes, 2 twins.
She decided to ease the dilemma of doing 2 different Christmas programs by combining them and doing one more elaborate program to show to both groups. Her inspiration came in the form of an early Christmas card from a soldier friend who was stationed in Italy during World War II. And this is the painting that was shown on the Christmas card. The theme would be Madonna and Child as portrayed in art, but she still needed some way to give continuity to her program. Shortly after beginning her research, it was nighttime, maybe a dream, she envisioned a procession of Madonnas visiting fallen soldiers on a battlefield. This inspired the concept of motherhood throughout the ages and gave her the idea for the title, March of the Madonna. Mildred planned to include about 4 tableaus, but she changed her mind and she went downtown and she saw at least 20 young Ripon matrons who looked the part. A woman posing as a model had to be married, and this rule continued throughout the duration of the pageants. She began doing extensive research and ordered prints from reproduction companies across the country. She also did research in libraries as far away as Chicago. She read many publications, some of them are foreign. I'm sure they were translated though, I hope. Another fruitful search was for materials to costume the Madonnas. She requested help from fellow club members and received baskets full of draperies, scarves, gowns, velvet, brocade, and jewelry. The first production was held in the Congregational Church basement. The church at that time was 100 years old. It was done in 5 parts. Part 1 presented information about legends, symbolism, and interpretation. Part 2, the prologue, presented a theme Madonna, and then a series of Madonnas were presented representing centuries 1200 through 1800. Now the first one started in 1200, and then when she started doing the succession of pageants, that's when she started going back to the prehistoric figures. Part 3 told the Christmas story by portraying the events in the Virgin Mary's life. Part 4 portrayed Madonnas from the 5 continents. And you'll see more of that later. I'm going to have a lot more slides when I go through kind of what the pageant settled into. Part 5 was the epilogue, and it featured a Madonna known as the Queen of Queens. 20 scenes displayed masterpieces of art using 24 tableaus in the first pageant. There was a musical prelude and background music throughout, as well as featured solos. 100 people saw that first performance, which Mildred thought would be the only performance. However, people began asking her to do a repeat performance the following year. Because they were so enthusiastic, she agreed and began doing more research to trace the mother and child motif back to the earliest pre-Christian figure. The production became an annual event and was moved to the main worship center of the Congregational Church. It grew and was perfected and enhanced year by year. Based on existing programs, 1949 may have been the most extensive, with 36 scenes. As the pageant grew, many Riponites got involved. A local industry built frames to display the art reproductions, life-size. Volunteers did wiring and lighting to create special effects. Local fabric merchants lent Mildred anything she needed for costuming. One Riponite donated space for a community art center, and this was to serve as a workshop and also a space to store the materials. Volunteer artists, musicians, and writers were hard at work preparing the show. Mona Kessler cut and painted infants, and they copied the original art reproductions to be held by the tableaus. Is Mary Brand here?
No.
Oh.
She had a dentist appointment.
Mary Brandt constructed a life-size replica of the Madonna from chicken wire and asbestos. And this is the original work here. Dr. Richard Morris, the chair of the Ripon College Music Department, found obscure music and created an original score. He trained and directed a chorus of madrigal singers, and after his death, his wife continued to direct the madrigals. Others wrote press releases and prepared really elaborate programs. And I have some of the programs here, and there are some laying out there that are worth taking a look at. 8th graders made cardboard stained glass reproductions to place into the church windows in order to block out the light during the children's matinee. Once this got going, it was 3 performances each year. Boy and Girl Scouts gathered materials and made wreaths and garlands to decorate the church. Mrs. Carl Brightman, once a neighbor of the Watsons in Ripon, traveled from Chicago each year to drape the living models with exquisite fabrics, and she took advantage of the use of many safety pins. This is one that Mrs. Delanowski was in also, a different year. The march opened with a prologue written and read by Mrs. Clemens Lee. The theme tableau was presented and the narration continued, tracing the mother and child motif throughout the centuries. Part 1 began with the first known Neolithic mother and child figure, whose maternal qualities provided inspiration to her world. A parade of ancient figures continued, representing Babylonia, Samaria, Egypt, the Orient, Rome, and ancient America. And you can see the replicas of the ancient statues in the background. It's like one from Egypt. Mrs. Spencer Beath narrated parts 2 through part 5, telling about the original work of art that inspired the tableau or reproduction. This narration also provided the time needed to prepare the next tableau to be moved onto the stage. Part 2 told the Christmas story by depicting events in the Virgin Mary's life. And I just have a few examples here of the original artwork that was used, and then the tableau, picture of the tableau. This was used for the presentation of the Virgin in 1945. And notice how closely that tableau matches the Virgin in the painting. Yeah, that was, okay, do you want to see who the people were? That's Betty Billings, right? Okay, the Madonna of Humility was used for the presentation of the Christ Child in 1946. And it was also used for Annunciation another year. And I only know Mary Jane Shanky in this one. The others, Mrs. Donald Johnson was the Virgin, and the angels were Mary Jane Shanky and Mrs. Robert Francis. Oops, sorry. What's going on here? Okay, that's the one I want. This is the nativity scene, and that's Shirley Sather. And this is the same one as before, but it was actually used for the Assumption of the Virgin in 1946. Part 3 presented presented Madonnas done in media other than painting, in the form of reproductions. Mrs. Eva Faustman did a reproduction of the Orante version in the 6th century. And you can see her working on it on the floor. And that's Camille Dolanowski with her. We think Eva Faustman also did the majority of the artwork for the programs. Mrs. Clarence Kuhn and her 3 children painted an 8-foot replica of a Swiss stained glass window dating from the 1300s. College and high school art students created copies of statues and a wall painting from the catacombs. Part 4 represented inner significance and universal feelings of motherhood. And here I have some examples again of the artwork in the tableau. Okay, this was entitled Evolution of a Spiritual Concept. It's Shirley Williams. And that is just unbelievable how close that is. And this is Jan Cole as the Madonna enthroned. Okay, this is Shirley Conti. Now, I do know that Shirley was never a tableau. She was just dressed up for the picture for the newspaper, but she did narrate the pageant that was done at Ripon College in 1955, the last one. But the tableau represented wisdom in 1949 and submission in 1955. And the Madonna Humility was used for reverence in 1955. And here's Betty Novitsky and the Virgin with Saints inspired representation of love in 1946. Part 5 presented Madonnas from around the world: Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, and America. The Mexican icon, Our Lady of Guadalupe, represented the Americas, and that's Florence Sherman. The epilogue, once again narrated by Mrs. Leek, traced the mother and child figures forward, explaining that the message is always the same. The Madonna figure evokes spiritual inspiration in the heart of the beholder. The Moor Madonna from the 20th century was revealed as the last mother and child image. The pageant closed with a repeat presentation of the theme Madonna, and I feel very sorry that I could not find the work of art that this tableau was based on. I even started looking again this week when I was going to do this, and Chris has helped me with all of this, and he's looked long and hard too. Mildred Watson. Although she was the driving force behind the pageant, she stayed behind the scenes, so I've been told. She did not have a forceful personality, and her gentle ways attracted others. She had a knack for recruiting volunteers and getting them to participate in a big way. The talents of the volunteers have been compared to the gifts of the wise men. Any questions? Comments?
Okay.
I have a question. I think I've asked you this before, Barb, but in the late 70s, I think it was, they had a program, and around Christmas time, and I think it was our Savior's Church, and they had young women. I was a young mother at the time, believe it or not. But and we dressed, for tableaus, and I remember you froze in your position, and I think they had the painting right next to us, and people just walked around. Does anybody remember that? Oh, I was the only one there.
I remember.
It's nothing this, extravagant or anything, but is there anybody? No? Okay. Well, anyway, I remember it very well.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure you do, yeah.
I wondered if Shirley wanted to say anything about her experience.
No, I had to go so fast. I had 3 children and I had to run in and run out. And I did not realize that it was of that much significance. I could have had so much information. I feel bad I didn't, But I was lucky to get out of the house for 15 minutes. I could have had everything,
Okay, didn't you tell me that you worked on one of the life-size reproductions?
Yes, I did. I did make one completely. And I don't know what happened to it. It was a big, huge thing. I couldn't even lift it. But I drew it and I painted it.
I was trying to picture this. Was it people, they would set this tableau up and people would just observe it when they walked by? Was it like
sit in the
living
audience.
windows? Was it a seated audience?
No,
Yeah,
they actually had seated audience, a stage. I know for the first production they mentioned local women taking old sheets and dyeing them black and move them, on and off stage very professionally, even though they had little or no experience as stagehands. But no, I think that it was in continuity, and Mrs. Veith talked, and they prepared one backstage, and then somehow moved this one on, and
Was it when there was a curtain or something?
yeah, there were curtains.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
You do.
vaguely, because I was pretty well in the late 40s. I was, 10, 12, something like that. So I remember it.
That's interesting.
Was there an apparent underlying reason why they went with only married women?
I think, and Shirley, maybe what
I never really knew any reason. No.
I think maybe it was supposed to be the look on their face or the spirituality from within, somehow having experienced.
To the baby.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember how you were
babies in
asked?
these things? No, no.
Is there dolls?
My mother was
They
a
were
good friend of
painted.
Mildred Watson.
Oh, okay. That makes
That's probably
sense.
why I got it.
Here it shows Mona Kessler painting the infants.
I knew her, because I went to school with her kids. And I knew Camille, she was a teacher. I had her for a teacher. And most of those people I knew.
And what was Mildred Watson? Who was she? What was her background?
Her husband was a doctor in town.
Yeah. They lived
Prominent
just down the
doctor's
street
wife.
here.
Yeah.
Dr. Eldon Watson, wasn't it? Eldon?
Yeah,
Yes.
he's in one of these too.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
There he is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was it a fundraiser, or
Don't
was it
believe
just
so.
free?
Don't believe so.
I think it was free. wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was just totally for the benefit of the community of Ripon. And, okay, all 9 churches participated, as it got going. All 5 women's clubs participated. Many, many individuals, from professional down to janitorial, and everybody took pride in their contribution to it.
It's my guess, based on Shirley, a lot of people had children who could only spare a certain amount of time and would, as you say, run in and run out and do your
Yeah,
thing.
I know, I didn't realize it was very, not overly significant, because Mrs. Watson was really busy all the time doing something. You really hardly knew what she was doing next. The way she was.
And Shirley Conti told me that she kind of hated to see her coming.
Oh, I knew in Sherman.
We don't have any people
Or
like
in
that.
Sherman, I knew her too.
They were sisters, weren't they? The
Yes, they were.
Contis?
Shirley
They were
Conti and
sisters.
Florence Sherman.
Yeah, they were sisters.
Shirley's still here.
Mhm.
She's in Pittsburgh right now, but she still lives here
Oh,
in the summer.
oh, I see, okay.
Barb, I read that this was in a major magazine.
Mhm,
Barb,
Good
Can
Housekeeping.
you tell us how that evolved? Or
I don't know, that's where I
how
got a lot of my
they built it?
information from, though, there's a copy of it laying out there.
Oh, okay.
This is a big Milwaukee Journal article.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, remember that? Sure.
I have it yet.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.